So that shifting of perspective is using the meta model. And the meta model by itself is pretty much all of NLP. So, you know, we're done. Thanks for coming. Everything else in NLP is an example of the meta model. For instance, I'm going to talk a little bit about communication tonight. And when I do, I'm going to talk about an overview of it, and then I'm going to go down into some specifics. And then I'm going to talk about the same level of overview on a different topic. Like, for instance, one might be mechanical, or the movements of the body, and the other will be verbal. So I'm saying I'm going to go into the same level of analysis in both of those, and then we'll switch into some other things. So that's a little bit about NLP, where it came from, why it exists. Well, it doesn't necessarily tell you why it exists, but it was the modeling process. When they did the modeling, they not only did they break down the language issues, but they also videotaped, they interviewed the clients, they sat in on sessions, they did every possible thing to involve themselves in the whole process so that they could get a better idea of how to duplicate it. So what they left behind was a trail of techniques. And that trail of techniques is what most people call NLP today. And the reason I qualify that is because NLP still consists of modeling. There was a guy not too long ago that, I think his name was Fitzpatrick. I'm not absolutely certain of that. But at any rate, he modeled the stockbrokers on the trading floor in the New York Stock Exchange. And basically to break down who was really successful, who was moderately successful, and which of the people were not as successful. So he could figure out what qualities it took to be really successful in that field, which isn't necessarily all that beneficial to everyone. But when you start to see groups of qualities that stack up in people that are highly successful in a variety of fields, you start to realize what the important qualities really are. One of the things that if you do modeling on with someone, one of the things that is important to remember is that not all of the information is going to be valuable. Some of it's going to be idiosyncratic to the person. For instance, when they were done with Virginia Satir, they came down here and modeled Milton Erickson, who was in Phoenix at the time. And Milton Erickson's idea was exactly the opposite of what Virginia Satir's was. He became increasingly vague. He would become more and more vague intentionally as a way to induce trance, so that people would become more and more receptive to the ideas that he was presenting. And he would present ideas in metaphor and a variety of other ways. And he did his therapy by being specifically non-specific. So he would tell metaphors that where the person would be able to get what he was talking about and see how it applied in their life, but he would never talk about their life necessarily. So that was his basic technique, and that became what was called the Milton model. So the Milton model is a process of becoming less and less specific, and in that way guiding people. So the idea there being that people are guided primarily by their unconscious mind. Hi, welcome.